Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Polo. Hope you guys are doing well. And today I am reacting to Thomas Sowell. Now, I've reacted to a video of his before, and I think he has a brilliant mind. I don't know if he's talked about enough in America, based on my opinion. And I'm the type of person where I love to learn new things, and I also love to challenge things that I've been taught. You know, if I don't know something, what I'll typically do is I'll listen to two people argue the opposing points and make up my decision between the two of them, you know, versus just listening to one side or listening to another side. That's kind of how my brain works. I'll just try to find someone smarter than me and then let them two argue it out and then make my decision from there. But when it comes to Thomas Sowell, there's very little that he says that I disagree with from what I've heard so far. So today I'm reacting to a new video, which is Thomas Sowell, The Vision of the Anointed. Do me a big favor and like the video if you like this type of content. Let's get right into it. Let's go.
Hello, I'm Ben Wattenberg. On this edition of Think Tank, we will talk one-on-one with social critic and economist Thomas Sowell of the Hoover Institution. Tom Sowell's new book, The Vision of the Anointed, argues that the assumptions and beliefs of America's liberal elites have created 30 years of disaster in education, crime, and welfare policy.
Education, crime, and welfare policy. And I like the title, The Vision of the Anointed. There's a sarcasm, sort of humor in it that, at least the way I'm reading it, that I kind of like the vision of the chosen people.
What are these assumptions? Are they wrong? Where are they leading us? A conversation with Thomas Sowell this week on Think Tank. Joining us today is Thomas Sowell, a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University. He is the author of many books that have cast a critical eye at American society, including Inside American Education and Race and Culture. His latest book, The Vision of the Anointed, Self-Congratulation as the Basis for Social Policy, has been called a broadside against the received wisdom of America's elite liberal intelligentsia. Tom Sowell, why don't you start out and tell us what the Vision of the Anointed is about? What is it?
Well, it's a vision that the problems that we see in the world are due to the fact that other people are just not as bright or as compassionate as they are. And that there are all these solutions out there waiting to be discovered, and that they have them. And that these solutions are to be imposed upon the rest of us by the power of government through taxation or in other ways. And what's really crucial about it is that their passion is so much greater than the passion on the other side, largely because what they have involved is more.
Who is the they?
Oh, the media elite, the academic elite, political elites. And the reason we can talk about their vision, even though they obviously vary in their opinions, is that the basic set of underlying assumptions about the world are very similar. And because these assumptions are the prevailing assumptions, the need to find evidence for them or to offer proof is much less. If something happens, they'll explain it in a way which will fit that vision. For example, when they find that prenatal care is less among blacks than among whites, and that infant mortality rates are higher, they immediately assume this is because of society's neglect, and therefore if only the government will step in and provide more prenatal care, that problem solves itself. But in reality, other groups have even less prenatal care than blacks and don't have any more infant mortality than white.
Boom. He said a lot there. And what I find interesting about this video is, you see how old this video is? This video was done so long ago, and this was before the social media boom. This is before people lived in their echo chambers following TikTok and Instagram that feeds the algorithm of whatever your mindset is, okay? This is before that. So it's been magnified so much today to the point where people are called influencers and things of that nature. And You got women influencing other women to join a very popular website. You got guys encouraging other guys to act a certain way that's toxic to humanity. And I won't name any groups, but, you know, for those of you who know, most of you probably know what I'm talking about. And they just get that, and you can just follow these groups and live in these echo chambers, and you don't challenge the way that you don't challenge what you're being taught. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. Excuse me, I'm not anywhere near as articulate and as Thomas Sowell here, but I will give my thoughts throughout the video the way I see it. But I do see the way that they can spin a narrative about anything that's being pushed. As long as it's being pushed a certain way, people will just eat it up without doing any type of research. Let's keep it going.
But they don't ever get to that second stage, because once they've seen something that fits their conception of how the world works, that's sort of the end of it.
Yeah.
Let me go back to that idea of who the they is. I mean, in your cosmology, are these liberals? Is that what they are?
Yes. You have the New York Times, the Washington Post, Harvard, Stanford.
He's coming out fire, and he's naming names. I like that about him.
You know, the Edward Kennedys, all the usual suspects.
Let me.
But it's more than those particular people, because this mindset goes back at least 200 years.
Who does it start with? What is?
I don't know where it starts, but you can find it in the 18th century. If you read William Godwin, Inquiry Concerning Political Justice in 1793, you have the whole vision laid out just as it was in the 1960s. But the 1960s were a crucial point, because that's when this vision became dominant.
This sort of arrogant vision that we know best.
Oh, yes.
And don't even have to subject it to normal forms of proof.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Let me read you something that Speaker Gingrich wrote in his book, To Renew America. He said, since 1965, there has been a calculated effort by cultural elites to discredit this civilization and replace it with a culture of irresponsibility that is incompatible with American freedoms as we have known them.
Does this sound familiar? Sounds pretty familiar. This is the year 2024, and we're seeing more of that now than ever.
Do you buy that? Is that basically what you're saying?
Yes, although I would limit that to those who are sort of at the top of this kind of thing, because further down the people believe things because so many others believe them, because they're in the air and so on.
But you know, I was particularly interested in what he said was that it is a calculated effort. This now, do you believe that the people, the anointed, as you call them, are sitting around in a conspiratorial mode, calculating, as Newt Gingrich says, and saying, here's what we're going to do? Or do you just think they're wrong and this is what they believe, and they have this certain arrogance about it? Because it's two very different ideas.
This is why I made the distinction between the leaders and the others. I mean, I think that when people say things like, more American wives are battered on Super Bowl Sunday, you see, than any other time of the year, and there's not a speck of evidence for that, that is calculated. Because there is no data that could even be misinterpreted that way.
What I'm learning, and especially in the past few years, I've learned that most things that are pushed, when people push things, they push it with fear mongering. Human beings seem to respond with fear. And that seems to work. You know, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And we need to do this. And yeah, women aren't just getting their butt kicks on Sunday. From my knowledge and all my years of living, people are generally having a good time on football Sunday, and husbands are not paying attention to their wives. They're not, beating down their wives because she didn't bring the nachos quick enough. I've never seen that.
In other words, because there's no data, period. And so, yes, but I think that 99% of the people who believe it are not calculating. And I think one of the reasons that it flies without even being challenged for evidence is that there is a certain vision of how the world is, and in that world, men are oppressing women.
Watching too much Lifetime television.
And therefore, when you say something like this, it fits the vision, and that's the end of it. There's no demand for evidence.
You have in your book sort of a series toward the beginning of how the actual process works of forming one of these ideas and selling it and rejecting the proof. Maybe you could just kind of march us through this as a model of it.
All right, there's a 4-stage pattern. And in the first stage is what I call the crisis. And so we're hyped to believe that something is a terrible crisis for which something must be done. What was fascinating to me in doing the research for the book is that very often the thing that's said to be in crisis has often been getting better for years on end. But that gets ignored. Then the second stage is,
for example, infant mortality, to use one of the
I'm thinking about teenage pregnancy and venereal disease. Those things were getting better. Teenage pregnancy was going down for more than a decade before sex education was introduced. Venereal disease, syphilis in 1960s had only half the incidence that it had in 1950. So all these things are going down, yet we're said to need sex education to deal with this crisis, which is then manufactured. And again, this is where the calculated part comes in. Now, 99% of the people who hear this don't know that. But the reason they accept it is because they also share the same vision. And because this is consonant with that vision, they don't have to ask for evidence.
And what's amazing with that is it started with sex education. And now I fear I have an 8-year-old son who's in school. And anything that's going to be taught to him about the world in terms of sex and gender and things of that nature, I'm going to teach him that. I don't want, to find out that my son is learning things based off someone else's ideology. That's one of my biggest fears. I want to know, what is he being taught in school? I want him to go to school and learn math, English, things of that nature. Okay. Not, some agenda that's being pushed, so I can kind of get where he's going here.
What's stage two?
That stage two is
the first one is there's a crisis.
Yes.
They establish a crisis, usually an artificial one.
Yes.
Okay.
Then stage two is the solution. You have a solution for this crisis. In this case, you have sex education in the schools. And then
sex education was in school when I was there. I remember all the boys, myself included, we sat at the front of the class, all right, because we thought we was about to see some stuff, and it turned out it was a woman giving birth, and most of us damn near passed out, but we were hoping to see some other stuff, but I remember that.
At that point, you say, if we do this will lead to beneficial result A. The critics say, no, it'll lead to detrimental result Z. Stage 3, you put it in the results, you put it in, and directly you find detrimental result Z, namely venereal disease and teenage pregnancy take off into the stratosphere. And then stage 4 is the fascinating part, in which they simply say, no, that doesn't prove that this was a bad policy, because there are many factors. There's complexity. It's simplistic to blame it on this. But they run through this routine on so many different things, including crime. Similarly, they said, in 1960, Judge Bazelon said we just desperately need to have some kind of change in the criminal justice system. Now, in 1960, there were fewer murders than there had been in 1950, 1940, or 1930. But again, that was completely ignored. And so now we have the revolution in the criminal justice system. People say, no, if you have put these new things in, there'll be more crime than before. They put them in. Almost instantly, the declining crime rate turns around and heads up again. And they say, no, it's simplistic to blame this on this. There are the root causes and the neglect of society and all the rest of it.
And what I noticed, and I could be wrong on this, but it seems like a lot of people further on the left, not everyone on the left is bad, but further on the left, and I'm not on the left or the right. I'm trying to think independently. I lean more towards the right because the left has gotten really goofy. But it seems like they push for more and more government, and large government doesn't really help anybody, so they're always wanting to push more policies, run through the government. And even someone who has dropped out of high school when I was 17, I'm not an educated man by any means. Some stuff I see so clearly, and people that I just think that are so intelligent, and you speak to them and they buy into this stuff, it just blows my mind. It blows my mind.
So it's heads I win, tails you lose.
So to go to that earliest example that you gave, you think the increase in venereal disease was caused by sex education?
I don't have to even say that. I don't even have to believe that. All I have to say is
do you?
Oh, I think it's hard to explain otherwise. I mean, you don't get social changes that drastic in a few years,
right,
without some particular cause. But the argument doesn't depend on that at all. The point is, they created the crisis artificially. The evidence shows there was no crisis. but they would not even subject it to any empirical test.
And then the numbers went up.
If they want to show some other factor came in and really caused this, I'm happy to hear that.
Now, why would a group of liberal intellectuals or politicians or media stars or whatever, why would they sit around and decide to dismember or dilute the criminal justice system if they thought in advance that it would raise the amount of criminality?
He asked very good questions.
Well, they didn't think that, but the point is,
They just thought wrongly that it would help.
Yes, but it would also give them an enormously larger role than they had before. I mean, a judge who just sits there and applies the laws that have been passed by the legislature has a very minor role.
In other words, it gives him more power.
If he takes the expansive judicial activist role, then of course he's on the leading edge, and he can look for the hosannas and all the rest of it from the sideline.
How does this play out in the realm of something else you have written about, which is affirmative action?
Exactly the same
How does
thing.
that process? What's the 1, 2, 3, 4 on that?
I haven't worked it out like that, but certainly there is no interest whatever in finding out empirically whether things have been made better or worse for minorities as a result of this program. And in fact, if you bring them up evidence, they'll say, but things would have been even worse had we not done this.
I don't know about that.
Similarly with the war on poverty, you can show how dependency on government was going down, poverty was going down before this program was ever put in. And within a few years, dependence on government was going up, and after a few more years, the absolute number of people in poverty was going up.
Yeah.
Look at the people who depend on the government the most, percentage-wise, okay? Which is black people. Black people depend on the government the most, and you look at the state of black people because a lot of those benefits benefit women more so than the men, which has desecrated the black family because a lot of the women, they're more so married to the government because the government rewards them if they're not married, so that's evidence there, and nothing's being done. Nothing's changed about it. This is the reason why you see crime so heavy, fatherless households. I grew up without a mother and a father, but enough about me. I can speak from experience. I can speak from experience on this. You look at the government, it doesn't help. It doesn't help in any way.
I read that in your book, but the absolute number of poverty is not the data. The relevant data would be the rate of poverty. And the rate of poverty, in fact, in the 1970s, I worked for President Johnson, so we have to establish there. So, I mean, the line we took was that during the 1960s, during the Kennedy-Johnson administration, poverty did in fact go down sharply. And then the rate since then, not the absolute number because the country has grown larger, the rate has sort of bounced around at about flat, somewhere between 12 and 15%.
Yes, but don't forget, this was sold to the country not on the grounds that if you transferred money from A to B, that B would have more money. That was not the argument. The argument was that dependency would be reduced, that you would, quote, invest in people, as Bill Clinton is now saying, now that people have forgotten what was said in the 60s. This will then, you give them job training and all those kinds of things, parenting skills, the whole bit. And this will then be an investment that will pay off in the future because there'll be fewer people dependent upon the government than there were before. And I go through a great number of people from John F. Kennedy to Lyndon Johnson, the New York Times, again, all the usual suspects. Said all these things.
Lyndon Johnson was not a usual suspect, Tom.
Well, he was the primary suspect. All right. But the fact is that was never tested. And when there were all these wonderful retrospectives held down in Texas and other places about this, the first order of business is to evade the criterion that they themselves set up when they set this out. And so no matter what happens, if it's a failure by the original criterion, then we just find another criterion by which it will be a success.
Well, let's just examine that for a minute. I have a friend of mine from those old White House days was listening to, again, Gingrich shortly after we had this great Republican revolution in 1994. A great meaning huge, not necessarily wonderful. We shall see about that. And he kept hearing Newt Gingrich use the word opportunity. This conservative opportunity society, we have to provide opportunity. And I was talking to him, he said, Gingrich uses that word opportunity almost as much as Johnson did, which is what you're saying, that was the rhetoric. It was called the OEO, was the Office of Economic Opportunity.
Yes.
That's what it was. Now, so if liberals were talking about opportunity, and now conservatives are talking about opportunity, and I'm sure you're for opportunity,
All God's children got opportunity.
All God's children got opportunity. So what is your problem that liberals said we ought to create programs for opportunity? And in point of fact, I mean, just to...
opportunity, not advantage.
I won't say play devil's advocate, because I mean, a lot of the things that came out of the Great Society, I mean, building all those junior colleges and community colleges.
Oh, I would disagree entirely. I think that was a tragedy of the first magnitude.
That was a tragedy.
Yes.
Why is that a tragedy?
You have millions of people who have absolutely no desire for an education, using up billions of dollars of the taxpayers' money, and not only not getting an education themselves, making it more difficult to give an education to those people who came to college with an idea of getting one.
Now you say...
So that's a great point. I mentioned that I dropped out of high school when I was 17. I didn't like the school I was in. I was always switching different schools my entire life. And I got my GED, I want to say, a month later. Before everybody graduated. And I went to college for 1 year, and I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. I just thought that it was just the right thing to do. I almost joined the military as well. But then a lot of my high school friends, they were promised that they were not going to get shipped off to Afghanistan, and that's exactly where they went. So I was like, I'm not doing that. I tried to join the Air Force, but they said that I was too heavy already, but I could outrun and I think they didn't want me. I was very athletic at that time. They wanted me to join the Army. But anyways, and a lot of the people I hung with, we were just in college because it's like the thing that you're supposed to do. And a lot of times when we did, we just partied and broke out of our shells and had a good time and ran up some debt, but didn't take advantage. At the time, I didn't have such a thirst for knowledge. Again, he's right here.
They have no desire for education. I mean, nobody is herding them into these community colleges and into the junior colleges and into the state university. I mean, they have a desire, obviously.
No, they do not, obviously, because lots of things go on in those places that are not education. I mean, where else can you find so many young people of the same age and opposite sex in one place?
Doing nothing but doing drugs and pounding bedboards.
A nice, convenient place to be. But anyone who is taught in a lot of these places, this ferocious desire for education as such is not terribly visible. And I taught at places where we've gotten, the upper 10, 15% of students. I mean, UCLA and whatnot. Neither I nor my colleagues found this great desire for education as such. They wanted to be in ivy-covered buildings for 4 years in order to get more money when they graduate and have a good time while they're there.
So you think the great American ideal, which has really been shared by both parties and both ideologies over recent decades, to allow more people to get into higher education, that is a bankrupt idea?
Oh, to allow is one thing, but to subsidize people at enormous cost with no real sign that this is producing what we intend to produce.
When you say subsidize, I mean, you talk about a junior college, a community college. I guess that's subsidized. It's below cost tuition, but it does allow kids who do not have the money to go to Amherst or wherever to start a college education. I mean,
people did that before the Great Society. I did it before the Great Society. My whole generation did it before the Great Society.
Boom.
You are saying that the great humanitarian political impulses of the 1960s have been almost without exception bad.
Well, there have been some good ones, but I'm saying that the assumption that on the education front, I mean, I would defy you to find a large number of people who've actually taught these students who really think that they're out there thirsting for knowledge.
Well, if you suppose they are thirsting for a better job, and we've set up a society where you have to be credentialed with a certain amount of college.
Thomas Sowell, what I like about him is he is like logical and critical thinking on steroids. Okay, just amazing. And what boggles my mind as we got Trump and Harris running now is how these people can sit and make these speeches and throw these rallies and talk about the direction of which way we should go in terms of the economy, in terms of war, and they don't consult with, it doesn't seem like they consult with brilliant minds like, say, a Thomas Sowell. This just blows my mind, like some of the things you hear what their policies are and what they want to do. and it seems like they just cater to their audience, whatnot. And I'm not telling anyone who to vote for or anything of that nature. I'm not doing that. I've just noticed that. Does anyone else see this? Like, why don't they consult with brilliant minds? Even if it's not Thomas Sowell, I'm pretty sure there's many people out there that, like economists and things of that nature. You know, I heard some of Harris's, what she wants to do with businesses and taxing them and things of that nature. And I'm like, how that's going to affect the economy. And I'm like, who is she consulting with? I mean, I'm going to tangent there, but anyways, yeah, we'll keep it back here.
Out there thirsting for knowledge.
Well,
if you think,
suppose they are thirsting for a better job, and we've set up a society where you have to be credentialed with a certain amount of college, so aren't they able to get a better job?
No,
because
this
of their
is the fallacy of composition. You know, if one person stands up in the stadium, he sees the game better. But if they all stand up, they don't all see the game better. Wow. As long as, you know, if you have a degree and the other guy doesn't, then you get ahead of him in the employment line. But we're not going to all get ahead of each other in the employment line by all getting degrees.
Boom.
So this whole idea that I guess, again, both liberals and conservatives are saying is that at this particular moment, 1995, we have to get more people into the education.
1995. Wow. They were talking about this. Let that sink in. They were talking about this in 1995, and you look at the state of what's going on today, it's amplified. And he said this has been happening years before he was born.
Liberals and conservatives are saying is that at this particular moment, 1995, we have to get more people into the education system because that's the way to compete. And we look at the data and we see that the people with more education are earning more money than ever before relative to the people with less education.
I disagree. Look at the Amish or whoever. I think that America is built more so on family. And it seems like, you know, most people that you come across today, that's becoming it's really the destruction of the family is breaking down, it seems like, with each year, and it's spreading around. And I think that that's a recipe for disaster because your family holds you accountable. All right. Your family holds you, you know, your family is a business, an entire family. There's families that are not educated, but they're farmers. They know everything about farming. They're educated in terms of farming, but they, you know, I hope you guys get what I'm trying to say. And they're successful. They're successful. So, you know, it's not a case where everybody just needs to go to college and get an education. I think that what needs to be pushed more so is for the need for family, because a lot of people don't have that.
That's all a fallacy of everybody standing up in the stadium.
People who fly on the Concorde, kids who've flown on the Concorde undoubtedly will make more money than kids who've only gone on buses. That does not mean if we put a lot of people on the Concorde, we're going to raise the national income.
But we would increase the revenues of the Concorde.
Yes, and which they desperately need, of course,
right.
But that's another story.
All right, now, and just to review the bidding, you date the full-blown nature of this situation sort of in the 1960s. Is that right?
Yes.
I mean, that's everyone on the conservative side Genesis is mid-1960s. That's when the world started. I mean, and I'm not arguing with that.
Well, not necessarily. I would say the fall in the garden.
Right. Okay. All right. Now, since the 1960s, the United States of America has won the Cold War, remained while a lot of people, including mostly conservatives, were saying, "Oh, America's lost its nerve," and because we're
I don't think that was mostly conservatives.
Well, I recall an issue of the public interest in the mid-1970s saying, "Has America lost its nerve?" A whole bunch of conservatives saying, "Oh my God, it's terrible."
Well, this is Jimmy Carter's era.
Well, maybe that's right. Since this terrible event 30 years ago, when the 60s dropped upon us, we've won the Cold War. We've continued to grow in affluence, in professional skills. We have absorbed about 20 million immigrants. We are the wealthiest, freest country in the history of the world.
I wonder how many immigrants that we've absorbed now in the past 4 years.
You would agree with all of that, roughly?
Well, I disagree entirely with your base period. None of this.
It's your base period.
None of these
you
things.
established in 1960s.
No. I'm saying
trapped
all those things that you talk about began long before the 1960s. They faltered to a great extent under Jimmy Carter. They were resumed with renewed vigor in the 1980s under an entirely different kind of vision. But I'm talking about the social decline of the country, because the social decline is all the more striking because here is a country that is prosperous. You can't blame the crime rate on the fact that there's more poverty, there's less poverty, there's more affluence. It's not due to foreigners because, as you say, we've won the Cold War. All the normal things that you might blame all this on aren't there. It's not because of diseases, because science has conquered more diseases. It's all because of self-inflicted wounds. And I'm saying these are the people who inflicted those wounds, and this is why we shouldn't listen to them anymore.
Ooh.
What are the nature of those wounds?
Crime.
No.
The disintegration of the family.
Oh, he went there. I'm glad he went there.
Disintegration of the educational system. And it's not going to matter. We'll be like the man who gained the whole world and lost his soul.
Who was it? Like, I think it was a guy, Matt Walsh, I think, went to a bunch of colleges and asked everybody, what's a woman? Okay. And then I think I went back and watched, who was it? What's the guy? I'm drawing a blank here. The guy that wore the sweater for the kids, and I was watching the old kids show, Mr. Rogers, and he was talking to kids about what's a woman and what's a man, and Mr. Rogers would be canceled today. He would be canceled today the way that he was talking, living in reality. And I had no idea that this was going on. This wasn't going on when I was in school that I knew of, but you know, and I'm not trying to offend anyone if you're watching, but I can only be honest and tell you exactly what I'm thinking. It blew my mind that he was able to, he was asking professors, people who had degrees, PhDs, and they couldn't answer that question. And I was like, whoa, we're living in like an alternate universe or something going on. So and again, he's talking about this in 1995.
Are the nature of those wounds?
Crime.
No.
If you look at crime now, it's crazy.
Disintegration of the family, the disintegration of the educational system, and it's not going to matter. We'll be like the man who gained the whole world and lost his soul.
Right. They're saying the kids can't read now. A lot of the kids.
A common root to all of those problems, other than you heard them from the anointed class. I mean, is there something? Is it big,
yes,
is it big government? Is it big government? Is that what?
No. It's the notion that ordinary people cannot be trusted to make the decisions that they've been making, but these must be preempted either by judges in the case of crime, by the schools taking over the indoctrination of other people's children behind their back and against their protests, or what was the other one?
The Electoral College.
The family, taking money from the taxpayers and subsidizing behavior, as well as encouraging it and legitimizing behavior that has turned out to be enormously self-destructive, undermining the family in 1,000 different ways.
Tom, you write in your new book, Division of the Anointed, available at all bookstores, about the Teflon prophets.
Yes.
What is?
Well, I think my favorite is Paul Ehrlich.
Before they get into this, I'm not sure what they're talking about, but what I like about this conversation is these are two men having a conversation and disagreeing at times without offending each other. There's no battery. Like when you watch CNN, you can tell that it's a paid-for network, and or if you watch The Breakfast Club, you know that they're paid for. Or even if you listen to like somebody like Pat Bet-David or somebody on the right, you know that they're rarely gonna say anything bad in regards to who they're pushing for. Okay. And I like people that call it straight down the middle, whether they're right or wrong. You know what I mean? Left or right, whatever term you want to use. I like that. And I see these men having a great conversation. What happened to this? Now, when you see so many guys, I don't even know if I've even seen many real men like on CNN just talking and speaking with their mind without being afraid to offend somebody and speaking in like a sort of format. It's like I can't even watch the stuff anymore, but that's just me. We'll keep it going here. It's a little tangent.
You write in your new book, Division of the Anointed, available at all bookstores, about the Teflon prophets.
I think that's why people like Trump so much, because at the very least he speaks his mind.
Yeah.
What is?
Well, I think my favorite is Paul Ehrlich, because he's been so consistently wrong on so many things. One, predicting mass starvation, I think was the 70s or the 80s, but predicting that we're running out of, running low on resources. And Julian Simon made this famous bet with him. He would offer to bet anybody $1,000 that they could name a set of resources and name a period of time. And at the end of that period of time, those resources would not be more expensive, as they would be if they were really running low, but would be either stationary or falling in real terms. And
so the whole gas thing is a hoax?
Ehrlich rushed in with his list of 10 resources, and he decided we'd come back at the end of 10 years. At the end of 10 years, not only was the bundle of 10 resources cheaper in real terms than it was before, every single resource he named was cheaper.
Let me raise a final point here. You make this vigorous attack in the Vision of the Anointed that we should no longer listen to these people. That's sort of the debate. They've been wrong. They don't prove their points. It's hurt us. Who should we listen to?
We should listen first and foremost to our own experience. You seem to act as if there must be alternative saviors. We should stop looking for saviors. I mean, the society has not existed for thousands of years because it had a succession of saviors.
I love this.
It's existed because it has institutions and processes through which people can realize their own goals.
No, I understand that, but you are attacking people who would like to lead us and tell us how the world works.
No, they don't want to tell us how the world works. They want to take over the decision for us. Yeah. They don't tell the parents how they ought to teach sex education to their children. They put this material in the schools behind the backs of the parents with instructions not to let the parents see it.
Okay.
Wow, they were doing it back then. And the problem with leaders is that leaders can be bought and sold, okay? Versus teaching people to think independently, to do their own research, make up their own minds, but these days it's a wrap for that. You can't walk down the street without people like stuck to their phone in some sort of echo chamber, not enjoying, nature, or if they're at the movies or wherever they are, they're in their phone. If they're at a concert, they're in their phone. So, I mean, this was before that. That's what, sometimes I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone, but maybe I'm just weird.
But that's the problem.
But we live in an open and democratic society. Now, Mr. and Mrs. John Q. Public are listening to this program, I hope, and they're saying, boy, that guy really makes a lot of sense. But basically, it's been a negative proposition. Don't listen to these people. Don't do this. Don't do that.
No. Don't let those people run your life.
Okay, but how do you practically?
I think it's a non-problem, Ben.
No, but how do you?
Non-problem. Those people are adults just like you and me.
Okay,
they have been running their lives for thousands of years. They don't need me to tell them what to do.
But this is a.
It's not a question I want to take over from people on the left.
No, but this.
I want them to continue to make their decisions as they see fit.
Right.
Beautiful.
But this is a democracy. They have to vote.
Even in a democracy, they can live their lives as they see fit.
Who should they vote for?
Now you're asking the guy to go against his own integrity. This is the entire thing that he's saying that you shouldn't do. Even I love that.
Oh, good heavens! They've been voting for whoever they wanted to without my help for 200 years.
But some of these people are voting for the people who are listening to these anointed people. I mean, I give my audience some advice. Tell them what to do.
Last year in 1994, without any help from me whatsoever, they changed who they voted for. So it's a non-problem.
You say without any help to you, but you and your confreres in the conservative movement, I think, have had an influence
but it wasn't because of this book, obviously.
Well, not because of this book, but because of your earlier wonderful books. Tom Sowell, thank you very much, and thank you.
Things are probably not as bad as we think they are. We just now live in a time where when it happens, it comes straight to our phone. And we don't just see the news anymore in our local area. We see the news everywhere. And I don't even know if the human brain is designed to be able to handle all of that, to be able to see all the things. I mean, I think I subscribe on one of my Instagram accounts to so many different like news and in different states, you know, just because I'm curious of what goes on there. And it's a lot to take in, you know, and then maybe I just think that things are worse than there. But I do know, like, I can't go back to my hometown of Cleveland to visit my estranged family. Even when I talk to them, they say, don't come here. It's crazy. They might rob you, especially since most of them, a lot of them live in the hood. So that's not exaggerated. And different places where crime is really bad, it's not exaggerated. But I do remember seeing some of those old 80s movies and stuff like that where crime and drugs were just as bad, especially like the crack epidemic and things of that nature. So, you know, who knows what's real and what's false, you know, but I don't know. What am I talking about? I enjoyed this. I enjoyed this interview with Thomas Sowell. I think that he is a great mind of our time, and I don't think he gets enough recognition, you know, in my opinion. I've only seen a couple of videos of his, but I love the way his mind works. I love what he thinks, and I love his viewpoints on the world. You guys let me know what you think in the comments section. And also, I appreciate you guys for watching. Hope you have a great day. Peace.